Hello, hi, Will back here again. Wonderful to see you. Wonderful to maybe first time see you. Hi, great. I'm Will, hey, from the UK. I usually ask myself open-ended questions and I try and answer them in this video format. So for today, question I'm going to jump in with is why, as a 30-year-old man who's in a stable long-term relationship and is married, is not having kids. Why I'm not having kids. Why am I not having kids? So, yeah, I got a bunch of thoughts on this one. For me, I've never wanted kids. I'm always conflicted with this question because I feel like I'm pretty good with kids. I have nieces and nephews. I like hanging out with them. I think they're pretty cool. Don't dislike them at all. But even when I was young, even when I was as early as 12, I remember one of the thoughts I had was man, I don't want to raise kids. I mean, back when I was young, there was certainly this idea that it was just overpopulation, right? There was this idea that there's too many people, right? And for me, I was very depressed as a younger person. I had a lot of mental health problems. So I was going through a period of internet suicidality. I was what's the point in living? So for me, I was no way. I'm why would I have a kid, right? I had really low self-worth as well. Wasn't a huge fan of it. I also felt out of the mainstream culture, very much like a misfit, disconnected from that. And I think the idea of having a kid was very mainstream, which I have mixed feelings about. But to elaborate on that, I feel that I don't want to have kids because actually I think it really conflicts with a lot of my personal values about what I want to do with my life. So for a long time I've just not had the resources to go and lean into some of my values until recently. Now I've got more of a stable job, a career path, direction, better income. I'm feeling good, man. My health's decent, pretty good. I'm a strong, I'm really strong at the moment, feeling strong. I've been going to the gym consistently. I feel like I'm in a good place. So some people speaking to me have been maybe now's the time, right? And people haven't actually said that to me, but I think this is kind of my brain speaking here. And I don't want that. So when I met my now wife, on our first date, I went up to her and I said, this is super heavy for a first date. I think I wouldn't recommend other people do this, but I was hey, I don't want kids. Is that going to be a problem? Because I think it would be unfair to build a relationship where you wanted kids and I didn't want kids, and ultimately you'd be disappointed if we move forward here, right? So thankfully she was on the same page. She didn't want kids as well, and we continued, and now we've been together for 7.5 years. It's been great. We've had our ups and downs, but we never get into screaming fights. I think we're both very kind of sensitive, so we don't kind of get into those kind of situations. But we're both kind of very supportive, I like to think, of each other. So I'm happy in that. I'm really happy in our relationship. And I guess something I always think about when I think about having kids is I have friends, right, who have kids. My sister has kids. And I just see how their life just gets turned upside down from having kids. I especially feel for mothers. It's different as a dad, right? And in theory, if I was to have a kid, I think I would do better than my wife, but I think our marriage would deteriorate. I think it would feel really bad, and we'd all feel locked in and trapped. And I think for me, this trapped feeling is something I'm really worried about, because for me, when I was young, when I had this really bad period of suicidality, I felt very trapped, very deterministic, very like, I have to keep going and pushing and doing more, and this is just my life and I have no options, right? And that led to hopelessness for me. That led to despair. And in my head, I kind of logically go to the next step of like, if I opt to have kids, I'm gonna like have a duty and a responsibility to them, which I think any parent should, right? That's what you're opting into when you make kids. You birth them, and it's a huge deal in my opinion. It is not something you should take lightly at all. Either parent, mother or father, right? And I think if I'm really honest with myself, I think I would take care of myself less because I would be focused on my kid. And, you know, I think people externally would be like, oh, that's great, you know, focus on the kid, good for you. That's what a dad should do, right? But then my mental health would plummet. And then I know when I'm in a bad place, I become avoidant, I become distant, and then I wouldn't help. And then I would have a mental health downward spiral that would probably destroy all of the like positive energy I've built in my life, I feel. And then my depression, my despair, my feeling of being trapped, it would come out and be projected on the kid. And I think for me, it would be indescribably heartbreaking for me if I had a kid and then I felt miserable about my life and the kid had any of that communicated towards them. And like it would like there's no way I could like not. I'm very on my sleeve with my feelings. They would come out. The kid would feel that, especially if they were my kid, because they would probably be some kind of sensitive. And I don't think I could like emotionally accept that. I think that would just break me in two emotionally. I don't think I can handle that because I think I would want to be able to give all I could to a kid if I was going to have a kid. And I just don't feel like we're in a world where I can do that and like also like enjoy my life. And I've heard some ideas of people being like, well, people don't want kids because historically kids were a benefit because like there was a family farm or a family business kids could contribute to, and now that's not the case, so they're like a burden because you have to pay for childcare and you have to pay for all this and pay for all that. And then like literacy rates are kind of going through the floor because of technology and screens and everything. So kids don't want to read and younger parents don't want to read. And even before all of this, which is kind of more of the immediate stuff that I'm just like hearing in the ether, right? I'm like, I don't want to like bring a kid to the world that can't like consent to the world. And that's like an impossible thing for a kid to do. A kid can't consent to existing, right? But I certainly felt like when I was in my lows, like I really regretted being born. And I remember how painful that was. And I remember now, you know, I'm not in that pain. I'm not in that misery, which is like great. I'm really glad I'm like mostly through it. But I don't want to put myself back there. I don't want to put my wife potentially in like a way worse position than that, right? And I don't want to neglect my kid and my wife. And knowing all the things I've kind of gone through and how my own psychology works a little bit of like having this avoidance cycle when I'm like overwhelmed and feeling low, that's ultimately what would happen, I think. And I think for me, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that to people I care about. I'm even getting a little emotional thinking about it. Thinking like how much pain that would probably inflict on everyone. And then I think in the despair, there are extremes I would go to. Like if I'm really honest with myself, you know, maybe I'd cheat on my wife. Maybe I'd leave. I really don't. In my current healthy state, never. Nowhere near. But when you push to extremes become a lot more kind of comfortable, in my experience of being pushed to extremes historically. So, yeah, I don't want any kids because ultimately I'm not optimistic about the future, and I value my own happiness. And I know I get really emotionally invested in things like having kids. And for me, that would mean I'd neglect myself, and then that would lead to downward spirals. And that would be a whole arc, right? And then, you might be able to argue, sure, I could probably get through that. But why do I need to put myself through that? I could go through different challenges, different struggles, different pains, which I think are important and valuable in life. And I think community is important and valuable in life. Having people around is good. But I kind of want to build myself up, and I want to have the bandwidth to build other people I care around me up too. So, yeah, I'm not having kids. I've never wanted to. I like hanging out with kids, but raising kids is a rough deal. If you have kids, man, that's tough. But yeah, that's the video. That's my thoughts on why I'm not having kids as an able-bodied 30-year-old man who's married. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.